Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, this is going to be a budget update to the Lightning Warp Spammer Witch Hunter build that I've been playing of late. So, this is going to be the final build update for the build, mainly for a few reasons here. The first reason, and I think the most important reason, is I think a lot of people who make content these days they never usually stop to think about the amount of currency and amount of time they put into a build and if that's realistic for your like average person, like average lay person, right? Like for instance, I had like I think like 10 divines sitting in my stash and I'm like, "Oh, I want to invest all this into my character cuz I want to be able to go do pinnacles and stuff with it." And I realized, "Wait a moment. If I invest this 10 divine into my character, right? Then that's going to make it pretty unrealistic for other people to follow, especially the people who are going to be watching this video and, following the Mobalytics guide and stuff like that. So I thought it would be better to just simply make an update before I go do all that. And it's much better for the audience in this way, right? So that's the first reason. The second reason, I have not seen my fucking pinnacle boss yet, dude. Oh my god, I've been trying to find citadels. As you can see on the side of the screen, I've been farming red maps like all day. I think I've done hundreds at this point, and I have not found my fucking citadel at all. Like I've not found, well, I found the citadel, but not like the other like mini citadels. I've not seen a single mini citadel, and it really pisses me off because I really wanted to fight one, but no, I can't find one. So I've been pretty much, instead of trying to find them, I have been focusing on setting up towers and getting breaches and stuff like that because this build's actually pretty good at breaches. That's another reason I want to move on because I want to get to another build that's like probably faster to like zoom through maps to find my fucking citadels, right? Cool, right? But that's pretty much it why we're doing the update. So let's do the full build in detail, shall we? So if you don't know, Lightning Warp is a lightning spell skill that can only be cast on two targets, either something that is within coal range. Coaling in Path of Exile 2 is a little different than in Path of Exile 1. The coaling works on different rarities of mobs. Like, for instance, you have 30% coal on normal monsters. You have a 20% coal on magic, 10% on rare, 5% on unique. So normally you can only cast lightning warp on those targets and it's very awkward, right? It's a really good teleport skill, but like, obviously you have to hit things that are within coaling range, which is obnoxious. But thankfully, we can actually cast ball lightning and cast our lightning warp on that. And that actually lets us spam lightning warp a lot. Now, there's actually a few benefits for spamming lightning warp. The main reason being Lightning Warp's cast time is actually lower than a lot of other skills currently. So if you look at, like, for instance, Arc has a 0.71 or whatever, 0.71 something cast time currently, while our Lightning Warp, which is comparable damage numbers, has a 0.5 second cast speed. So as you can see, as I'm like running through maps, I'm just like zooming, like spamming the button like a bunch. And that's why I'm able to do that, is because the cast time on it. So that's the quote unquote benefit for going through the rigmarole of casting ball lightning to be able to cast lightning warp. Also, it has a really favorable AoE. I don't know if you could notice in the footage, but like the AoE on lightning warp is pretty big, and it actually lets us feel like as though we're playing a Path of Exile 1 build instead of a Path of Exile 2 build, right? That's cool. That's lightning warp. Why are we a witch hunter? You could go Stormweaver and do more damage. You could don't run like a cast on shock, like a lightning conduit setup as well, because I don't know if you know, but if you put two lightning warp shocks on the ground and well, if you put one on the ground, they'll actually stack shocks. So you get two shocks after a few seconds. And then of course you can consume both of those with lightning conduit. I don't think that interaction has very long to see in this world. I'm pretty sure after they come back from Christmas, it's going to be something they look into because I think that's utterly absurd. But of course, who knows, right? Maybe it'll stay. But yeah, there's a good reasoning to play Stormweaver here. But the reason why we're playing Witch Hunter is because of the niche interaction between utilizing Decimating Strike and what we're doing here. So Lightning Warp can only hit either ball lightnings or things that are within coaling range, right? So if we think about that for a moment, we need to get things to coal range. Well, there's a very easy way of getting things to coal range very quickly, and that's with, of course, the Witch Hunter's Decimating Strike. Decimating Strike deals up to 5 to 30% of a monster's HP and after you hit them, and then of course you can hit them after that to kill them more. Now, what's cool is on average against a normal monster, right? You can actually get them down to like you're only doing like 45% of their HP on average in terms of damage. So they have pretty much have half health for the capabilities of the build, which means we can clear very quickly, like all the trash very quickly. And then when that trash dies, they also explode thanks to the Witch Hunter's explosion. So this makes it so that we can open up a breach and kind of just zip around a bunch, and it feels really good for mapping. Now, like I said, if you want more single target, you definitely want to go for Stormweaver here. Witch Hunter definitely has the better clear, in my opinion, but that's just me, right? So that's cool. Now, for our single target, we actually run a swap on our spirit. We are actually swapping in a cast on shock arc. That's because arc just has favorable numbers, and we can't like put a cast on shock lightning warp in there because that would just not work as well as we would like. I'm not entirely sure because what would happen is we would shock them and we might have a ball lightning, so it would just be casting mana, like costing mana for nothing. So of course we don't go with that, so we go with the arc instead. So that's just some extra single target on top. Now for our defenses, we have a just plethora of defenses on this build. That's actually why the damage isn't as high as it could be with this build, is because I went full bore into defenses because I don't like losing maps. I don't know about you guys. I don't like losing maps. So I actually focus more on defenses on this build. So we have evasion energy shield base. So we're rocking like 50% evasion currently with like 2000 ES. Cool. Great. We have recoup on the tree because it turns out the ES and the evasion is still not enough. So we actually have like, I think like 40% recoup on the tree currently, something like that. Maybe 30%. I'm not entirely sure. I can't remember, but you definitely have some recoup. That feels really good, by the way. Then for even more layers of defense, we have our Grim Harvest for ES remnants to double our ES remnant pool and stuff like that. It's really cool because in breaches you end up like with double your ES like all the time because you're killing that many monsters. Then we're also running Ghost Shrouds, which gives us I think 4% of our evasion as energy shield when we're hit. So it's like 300 to 400 evasion when we get hit or whatever, something like that. And that just gives us even a more of a buffer to damage because really all we're trying to do is just reduce the randomness of bullshit that gets thrown our way when we're playing a build like this. Because the biggest problem with this build, and the reason why I don't rate it highly versus other builds, is mainly just the fact that you kind of have to be in melee range when you're doing single target and you're clearing. You have to be in the face of the enemy, and that leads you to being able to be killed and stunned and frozen way quicker than like if you're playing like a spark character, right? So that's like one of the more downsides of the character. But yeah, that's all the defenses. One interesting thing to note, we're actually getting carried super hard by mana remnants. Mana remnants, the way they work is either you get one when you kill a shocked enemy, or you get one when you crit a shocked enemy, I think unique or rare, and has a 1 second cooldown on that. And every single time we pick up one of these little blue balls, they give us like 200 mana per, and that's a lot considering our main link only has like 100 mana per cast. But yeah, cool. That's pretty much it for the character. That's how the character works. Now, if you haven't already, I would heavily suggest looking at the link down below. That'll be a full written guide of the character. We can find all the gear, everything like that. But with all that being said, let's go in game and talk about the build more in detail, shall we? All right, so here we are in game with the character. Let's go over the skills real quick. So we have Lightning Warp. Right now, I have a level 18 Lightning Warp. You can invest and get a level 21, and you can also invest even more to get a 6 link. But like I said, I preferred not to do that so that I could show you guys the budget setup, quote unquote. I'm running Inspiration. Inspiration is really good. Turns out it's like one of the best supports in the game because guess what? Um, Things not costing an absurd amount of mana means you can actually scale either cast or attack speed, and that helps a lot. We are actually able to actually scale cast speed once we put on inspiration support. So just think of this as a way to enable casting faster. We're also running overcharge. This will actually apply to the shot ground that lightning warp applies itself, and it gets us all the way up to like 50% shock on single target, which is great. Because if you look at all the other supports on the tree, there's not that many supports you can actually run with Lightning Warp. Considered casting, just 40% more damage for less cast speed. The way that I view this is less cast speed and more damage. So it's not as much damage if we just went up with a straight damage support, but it reduces the amount of mana I consume per second. And that's very important with a build like this when you're spamming that many spells. Then we're also running Magnified Effect for clear, and we're swapping into Conk Effect for single target. Now, speaking of single target, we actually have Grim Feast and Ghost Dance as our defensive layers. We just get a bunch of Grim Remnants thanks to Grim Feast, and then we get a bunch of extra ES thanks to Ghost Dance. Now, what's cool though is on single target, we can actually turn both of these off and turn on cast on shock with just a few clicks of the button. The main reason why we do this is because Grim Feast and Ghost Dance, they don't really do much against bosses. That's because Grim Feast only gives us energy shield on kill, and Ghost Dance only works when we're hit while we have a Ghost Shroud. But the problem is, like most of the bosses that we don't want to be getting hit by bosses in the first place, right? We're playing an evasion build. We shouldn't be getting hit by bosses in the first place. So instead of that, we actually go with the cast on shock with Arc. Arc deals a decent amount of damage. It's very comparable to Lightning Warp in damage, and it doesn't. Now you could put Lightning Warp in this, but I found that Arc is actually better for our specific setup, mainly because we end up shooting out 3 arcs by the time we shoot off 1 lightning conduit, and it ends up being more consistent DPS. And we also run energy retention on that cast on shock setup, and impetus for increased energy gain, and elemental focus as we're applying shocks with other means, so we can just do more damage with the arc. That's pretty much it for those skills. Then for Orbis Storms, we're mainly running it for extra shocks for our cast on shock. So we place it on a single target, we shoot our ball lightnings and do a bunch, and that'll trigger the Orbis Storms that hit the target and shock them. So there's a few reasons for that. The main reason is for lightning exposure for even more negative res, and it's also for arcane surge. We actually gain arcane surge by spamming, putting down our Orbis Storms. I think like 3 times currently, and also as well persistence to make it last longer. We do have to be standing near the Orbis Storms to get the procs, but it just gives us a bunch of extra attacks for shocks, for cast on shock. And also, like I said, exposure. We have Blink here. Blink is just invaluable on almost any build, as it just lets you be able to get out of situations that you normally would die in because you're being stun locked or whatever. So Blink is just really, 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 really good. Mana Remnants here. Mana Remnants, like I said, just give you a very large amount of mana. Very, very, very large amount of mana, right? Just nice amounts of mana makes up for how much we're casting. Then we're also running Cannibalism. Cannibalism just gives us life on kill. This helps us sustain while we're mapping, especially in those big breaches. Then for Ball Lightning, we have a 5-link one here. We want to go with a level 11 or as low as a level of Ball Lightning as possible, which is a level 11, because we don't want to be spending that much mana on this skill because we're not actually using it for damage or anything like that, because we're using it to create a bunch of balls to teleport to, right? So we're running deceleration to reduce the speed of it. This makes it so that they're more manageable and easier to aim the ball lightnings properly on a single target and clear. Running scatter shot, so we get 3 projectiles every single time we cast it. Then we're also running unleash, so we actually end up getting 9 different projectiles to spam through, which lets us actually, play lightning warp. And then we're also running arcane tempo just to give us even more cast speed. If you were to put a 6-link on this, I would probably go for the mobility skill so we can actually move while we're casting it. And that's pretty much it for ball lightning. Then we're also running conductivity as a curse for just negative res. And that's pretty much it for that. Now, let's talk about the passive tree. So the passive tree is very interesting here. Like I said, we're playing a mercenary with decimating strike for the 30% damage hit eventually, right? Also running calling strike here, just lets it clear quicker. Then we also running zealous inquisition for the explosions. Very nice explosion, especially in breach. I would do Uber Lab, but I kind of felt like it was a waste of time on this build because we have access to No Mercy. I mean, we have access to Witchbane, which is pretty bad. We have access to Weapons Master, which is pretty bad. And we have access to sorcery ward, which is bad if you don't have the second part of sorcery ward. So I felt like it was not worth doing my fourth lab. You could do your fourth lab, and if you did, I would probably put it into Witchbane, but that's pretty much it for our ascendancy. Now here, this is the biggest problem with playing this build specifically, is we do have to path from Witchhunter. You have to go all the way up to get to the good nodes that we want for this kind of build. We do grab just some damage on the way. We can grab some evasion as well on the way if you need more evasion. We're grabbing even more evasion here. We're grabbing magnitude of shock specifically here to give us that multiplicative modifier with shock. Grabbing more energy shield related stuff. Grabbing reduced mana cost of skills. That's very important to make the build feel good because our our lightning warp costs a lot of mana and we're spamming it very quickly. As you can see, our cast speed is 0.29 seconds. So right now we're casting it 3 times per second. That's a lot of mana per second. So we need to make it up for that. Lots of crit, even more damage, more crit, more energy shield, more mana regen, more crit, recoup, like I said, more mana sustain, more energy shield, more recoup, pens for clear. And then up here, we actually path through this stuff. We don't actually utilize any of this. We're just mainly pathing through here to get this massive amount of crit chance here to get our, where is it? Our lightning warp all the way to, I think, 30. Actually, we had a little bit more crit before. It's probably because we're missing this node right now. I'd be running these nodes right now, but like we're running out of passive. So we definitely need some more crit chance with this character eventually. There will be some ways so we could do that eventually once we invest more currency in the character, which I have, like I said, chose not to. That's pretty much it for the passive tree. So let's talk about the gearing. So you want to staff like this with like as much cast speed as possible, as much level of all lightning spell skills as possible, and the spell damage. Instead of the extra damage as lightning, although that is 21% more damage, you probably want to go for spell critical strike chance on the staff instead, but that would be absurdly expensive probably because you're kind of using staves that like all the other mom builds will be using. But yeah, that's like the kind of staff you want. Eventually you want a crit instead of that attribute requirement stuff. Now for helmet here, just energy shield. The main reason we're running this is because we're grabbing this node here because it's +2 flat evasion per 1 max energy shield on the equipped helmet. So we're actually getting like, I think like close to 380 evasion on this. And also as well, resistances, life, we're a hybrid build. So we wanted to get as much life and energy shield as possible on our gear while also getting evasion eventually. Then for our chest here, spirit, so we can actually run all the stuff that we're running on our reservations, evasion, energy shield, and then just some extra resistances as well. That's pretty much it for the chest. The amulet, I got very lucky with this amulet. It is an absurdly good amulet. Flat energy shield, flat HP, spell damage percentage on the solar amulet with +1 to level lightning skills. That critical strike damage bonus, which doesn't matter for our build currently, but it would matter for playing a different one. And then resistance as well. Eventually you'd want to upgrade this, but that's what I have. I do have the Anoint of Royal. That's because I like the AoE currently as it gives us just a bigger lightning warp, which lets us clear better. So yeah, that's why we're running this amulet. Then for ring here, anything with cast speed, resistance, mana, HP. Same thing with the other ring, cast speed, resistance, mana, eventually HP. I actually have a double rarity roll on our ring here, which helps us farm because if you don't know, rarity does affect drops of currency as well. Definitely want to get rarity where you can, if you can. Now for our gloves here, Malagora's Virtuosity. The whole reason why we're running this, if we were to look at, I don't know why it's not letting me swap back. It's literally not letting me swap back. What the heck? There you go. That was so weird. But yeah, Malagaro's Virtuosity. The main reason why we're running this is because, I don't know if you can tell, crit damage bonus 300%. Watch this. We go to like 100% crit damage multi. The reason why we like this is because it saves a lot of points. We don't have to run all these extra points, crit damage bonus, and all that. We don't have to run any of these extra points that give us crit damage bonus, right? Which means it saves us a very large amount of passives on the passive tree that we kind of consume by being just a witch hunter that is trying to play a spell build. So yeah, that's cool. Belt here, life, mana, res. Eventually you'd want one with like probably charm reduced usage or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. Or maybe with +1 charm eventually. They did just add like an easier way of getting that this patch. We'll see. Then for boots here, movement speed, mana, HP, resistance. That's pretty much it. And then for the charm I'm using right now is freeze charm. I've noticed I've been getting frozen a lot more than the amount of actual like stuns I've been getting. So the freeze charm has been great. And that's pretty much it for the gear. That's pretty much it for the passive tree, the skills. With all that being said, this has been Dread. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.